Today I will be talking about the developing situation in Syria. Some people are calling it the Syrian revolution, some people are calling it the Israeli Psyop. In this conflict, it is very important to understand what's happening in the area of separation. Israel moves in their armored divisions inside this buffer zone. This whole yellow area is basically the area of separation, which is manned by the UN DOF. This is the key part that I want you to take away. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. People will question this. Okay, they'll say, okay, he is claiming this, but who is there to guarantee that he will move back? Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to use this buffer zone as leverage. One of that could be recognition of Israel. I think Jolani understands that. Why is he being so pussyfooted about this? And maybe when they start discussing the area of separation, they might also want to be discussing this. That, okay, listen, if you want us to get out from here, why don't you concede northern Syrian territory? So all those areas where the Kurdish elements are. And those are all the oil-rich areas. So they have to be puppets. They just cannot be that smart. One big reason why this whole Israeli ingress inside the area of separation is Bashar al-Assad himself. And now to push them back either diplomatically or militarily will be a little bit of a challenge. Instead of propaganda, I call it propaganda. Who is this Jolani guy? Where did he come from? He's an unknown person. So a friend of mine, Shubi Zaman, he did this little thread about who al-Jolani is. Now that you know a little bit more about who this unknown devil is, and that's the whole point of fake news. They just throw so much at you that it becomes like very hard to piece up together. And the whole point is inundate you with all kinds of information to confuse you. Okay, you get rattled by all the information. So someone took a picture of Jolani in his military gear. This is Hebrew, and that shows that he's like he would be so dumb that he would take a picture with Hebrew written on his shirt. So if you go to their website, you could scroll down and see all their where they're located. Right at the bottom, you will see their address. You can quite clearly see that it's a Chinese company, manufacturing facility, all in China. If you have any doubts about who is behind these guys, keep an eye out on these two things: how the area of separation unfolds from this point on, and where do defense contracts go. Welcome to another episode of Basement Bedhead. Today I will be talking about the developing situation in Syria. Some people are calling it the Syrian revolution, some people are calling it the Israeli Psyop. Everyone's a little confused about what's going on. And Syria has that history of being a very confusing theater of conflict. No one really understands what's going on. So many regional players, global powers are involved in all of this stuff that people have legitimate concerns and doubts. I think the speed at which this whole thing has unrolled is also seeding doubts about what's going on here. And who are these people? Who is Tahrir al-Sham? Where did they come from? Who is Jolani? How did this guy, who has a $10 million bounty on his head, face no resistance from, forget about the Syrian army who may have had taken out of the fight, but what about the US? What about Israel? How come they let this guy roll all the way in without attacking him? Okay. And on the other side, you see the Israelis encroaching onto Syrian territory. Okay, so they've been moving into, and then they've declared, I will come to that, to what's called the area of separation. And they're claiming that they want to create a buffer zone, and this buffer zone actually exists from before, but they're taking active control of that buffer zone with the excuse of security concerns that we had to deal with the Syrian government in the past. Even though Syria doesn't recognize the Israeli government, but this was a UN brokered deal where a buffer zone was established between Golan Heights, and which Israel claims is their territory, contested by the Syrians. So from that point on, up till a few kilometers in, close to Damascus, but not really hitting Damascus. So it's a big strip of land that kind of buffers Israel from the Syria mainland. Okay, so as they moved in, they really, the Syrian army obviously was not there to oppose them. But where were these new resistance? Where were they? Why didn't they come and push them back? And they still haven't done anything about this. And then the Israeli Air Force continues to bomb Syrian infrastructure. Okay, and what have these guys done in response? Absolutely nothing. Okay, so what is going on? Why is this all happening? And specifically, I want to talk about the area of separation. Okay, because there are a lot of diplomatic repercussions of what's going on there. I feel there's a bigger game going on that needs to be understood, and also I'll tackle that separately as we move forward. So in this conflict, it is very important to understand what's happening in the area of separation. Okay, so this is the buffer zone that Israel talks about a lot. what has happened was this buffer zone kind of is a little bit of a cushion between Israeli mainland, or let's say Syrian mainland, and the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights basically is what Israel encroached in 1973 all the way up to 1974. They encroached onto these Syrian-held territories, and now they have their forces there. Okay, so this area of separation is beyond the Golan Heights and into Syrian territory main. Okay, and this was established by the UN back in 1974. It's manned by them. There's a peacekeeping force there by the name of UNDOF. Okay, so the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force. Yeah, and these guys there are charged with maintaining the peace, and making sure that there are no hostile elements that are attacking from the Israeli side onto Syria or from Syrian side to Israel. But as the Syrian army moved back and they collapsed, the excuse that Benjamin Netanyahu gave was that we have to look at our own security. These bilateral agreements that we had between ourselves and the Syrian government is no more. So we are going to take charge of this buffer zone. Okay, and they also came with the excuse that because this observatory force is not really very well equipped. Okay, they don't have like proper tanks or what have you. Okay, so they're just like normal people with light weapons. So Israel had the excuse that we came here to cover them because now they're going to come under attack. Okay, so using that excuse, Israel moves in their armored divisions inside this buffer zone, and a lot of people, specifically the people from Assad's regime or the Iranian propagandists, started claiming that, oh look, these guys are taking over Syrian territory, and look at these guys, the opposition or the new government, they're doing nothing about this. So what's the bigger game behind this whole thing? I think that's the key thing to understand, because what's going to happen in the coming days, you will be able to make head and tails of that if you understand this area of separation. Okay, so if you look at the map of the area of separation, you will see that it stretches from Mount Hermon, which is kind of like in the border area of Lebanon and Syria. So it stretches from there all the way down to Jordan. Okay, so this whole yellow area is basically the area of separation, which is manned by the UNDOF. Now, this is the area that the Israelis have walked into, or I shouldn't say walked in, but just moved in with their armored divisions, and they are now controlling this area. Okay, now as they've done this, the first thing that I want to show you is the Israeli Prime Minister's tweets about this. Okay, so when the Assad regime fell, the Prime Minister's office basically sent out this tweet, and he actually even said this in a speech where, obviously he would not miss this chance to thump his chest, but we've knocked down one key block of the axis of resistance, and he specifically addresses why they moved into this buffer zone area. Okay, and if you read this tweet over here, he says, but it also means that we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the separation of forces agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. So as you can see, he is pursuing this as a threat to Israeli security. Okay, it goes on. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. Okay, so that's another point that I want to come back to about Syria not having, and Bashar al-Assad specifically not having the foresight for what was about to roll down. Okay, so come back to that a little bit later. He goes on. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. Okay, so this is a temporary, and this is the key part that I want you to take away. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Okay, so again, you can hold the guy against his words. Okay, so he quite clearly concedes that this is Syrian territory. Okay, and that they've done this as a defensive position, and they fully intend to move back once a new agreement is in place. Now, a lot of people will question this. Okay, they will say, okay, he is claiming this, but who is there to guarantee that he will move back? And that is actually not a bad question to ask. I was hearing a couple of other people who have said that, look, every time Israel has advanced forward with the intent of taking more territory, they've never moved back. It's not really true. If you look at the past, they've moved into southern Lebanon, in 2004 or maybe the early 2000s, and then they were pushed back by Hezbollah. Okay, and then even before that, when they moved into some part of the Egyptian desert, they kind of occupied that space until there was some agreements had inside the UN, and then they moved their forces out from there as well. So not that to say that Netanyahu is speaking the truth here, but at least from a diplomatic perspective, this is the situation as it stands. Okay, the Prime Minister of Israel is claiming that this is a defensive posture, and he has no intention of occupying this territory. Okay, but let's look at some the repercussions of what's going on here. Now, as you know, Israel and Syria have never had good relations, because Syria does not even recognize Israel as a country. So what Benjamin Netanyahu might be doing here is trying to use this buffer zone as leverage to get some kind of, let's say, diplomatic victory here. Okay, one of that could be recognition of Israel. Okay, so and by the way, before I come to the recognition of Israel, you might have noticed that Jolani has done nothing about this. Okay, and Jolani, in fact, at least the only thing that I've seen from him is that he has asked the international community to step in and press these guys back. Okay, and he clearly stated that Syria does not want to get involved in a new war. We have our own issues to fix, so it's up to the international community to step in and push these guys back. And that came out in an official communique from the Syrian government. I don't know if we can even call it the Syrian government at this point, but that's what it is for now. Okay, so as they come to the table of discussions, of negotiations, there could be the push for a new setup to normalize relations with Israel. Okay, and this could be a leverage, a form of leverage that Israel has in its hands. That, look, if you want us to push back, recognize us, we'll move back. And what will that do? Then that will basically also regularize or normalize Israel's take on the Golan Heights. So not only have you conceded now that Israel's existence as a state, but you've also now officially annexed your Golan Heights to their on their side. Okay, so the minimum acceptable victory for him would be, okay, I was able to force this new Syrian government to accept our claim on the Golan Heights. Okay, so once I've done that, we can now move back from Mount Hermon and what have you, that entire strip that I showed you, and that's it. I go back and tell everyone, and if you read this entire tweet that he shared, he actually mentions that Golan Heights is now officially ours. Okay, so he makes that claim on this tweet thread as well. Now, one reason why Jolani is not taking any action, okay, I think Jolani understands that, and a lot of the people inside the new Syrian government, and obviously the Turks are involved here as well. You might have been seeing the Turkish intelligence chief in Syria these days. They're definitely briefing Jolani and his crew about what's going on, and they understand that, look, if Jolani says anything that will threaten, that can be perceived as a threat, then that will be taken as, like, let's say, as a legal basis for occupying this new and annexing maybe this new territory that Israel has moved itself into. Okay, so when people, and I'm addressing those conspiracy theories that are going around. Why is this guy not taking any steps? Why is he being so pussyfooted about this? Why is he not taking them on? Why isn't he even threatening them? And this is precisely why. He understands that. I think the Turkish intelligence is also briefing him on this, that, look, if you say anything that will be perceived as a threat by the US and Israel, you're giving them the legal legs to stay on here. Okay, so don't say anything that will jeopardize your position here. This is how negotiation works. You don't, like, strong arming every time. Sometimes you got to be careful about what you say, as that might be taken against you. So this is one reason why the Syrian government is not, or the interim government, or maybe I can call it the interim government, is not taking any decisive position on this. Okay, neither threatening the Israelis, but just using that normal diplomatic language that, look, this was supposed to be UNDOF held territory. They need to come in and make sure that the Israelis move out. So there will be rounds of negotiations, and it's not just about this territory itself. Okay, what And you need to understand the larger game. It's not just the Israeli intelligence and the US intelligence, but there's also the component of the Turkish intelligence. Okay, Turkey has interests inside Syria, specifically the northern belt. Okay, so if you look at the northern Syrian side, a lot of that space is very key to Syria. I mean, Turkey. It's the Kurdish belt. The Kurds, have been, they have the advantage of strategic depth in at least 4 states around. If you look at the map, you will see that there are at least 4 states that the Kurdish people are settled in. So it gives them a lot of strategic depth. Okay, so if one state, in this case Turkey, is very aggressive against these Kurdish groups, these Marxist Kurdish groups, then they can be pushed back. But they always have somewhere else to go and regroup and then come back and launch a counteroffensive. Okay, so their spread into these 4 countries gives them a lot of strategic depth. Okay, so and Syria is one of the main ones. Okay, so for them, Syria and Turkey and Israel have this whole Cold War going on between who gets what. Okay, how much Turkey doesn't want Syria to be Balkanized at all, but it seems like Israel and maybe even the US want some kind of balkanization. Okay, they want to establish an independent Kurdish state, and the Israelis have actually even said this very openly, that if you listen to the think tanks and some of their hawks, they seem to be very upbeat about these developments. I mean, they're a bit apprehensive too, but they're also upbeat about their opportunities here. Okay, so there are opportunities, and maybe when they start discussing the area of separation, they might also want to be discussing this, that, okay, listen, if you want us to get out from here, why don't you concede northern Syrian territory? Okay, so all those areas where the Kurdish elements are. And those are all the oil-rich areas. Okay, so this is a big geopolitical game going on, and I don't know where this will go. But now that you know this, you will start understanding why the current posture being taken by the Syrians. Why is it not being aggressive? Why is aggression not the right thing to do right now? Maybe you will start understanding that a bit more. And all this to say that, look, you may be thinking about the area of separation and all of this activity as people who have been brought to power to aid Israel's expansion. Okay, a lot of people will feel that way, but these are nothing but conspiracy theories. Okay, the whole base, if you look at it, is that you are not really able to digest the fact that there are people who can have agency. Okay, so people who are these militants who have taken over and they're becoming the new government. You have to feel like these guys they have to be puppets. They just cannot be that smart. So that's what it boils down to if you look at it. So there's a little bit of racism there. There's a little bit of let's say a superiority complex about how you view these people. And look, there's no denying that there could be some elements inside, or many elements inside within. It's a number of groups. There's so many groups inside. You never really know who's on whose side. Okay, so we know for a fact that a lot of these Kurdish groups who actually were against Assad are also pro-Israel. Okay, so are they actually, if not pro-Israel, they're very, let's say, independent-minded. So they look at their own interests, and whoever is the best person to ally with at that particular point in time, they will go with that side. So they're all these separate power centers. So try to understand that these people have their own agency, and even if they seem to be collaborating or at least are quietly acquiescing to Israel's immediate objectives, they don't necessarily agree with them. Okay, so they will maybe the strategy now is to keep quiet and let them have their say, and we will press forward when the time is right for us. So that's the whole objective of trying to explain what's happening at the area of separation. So one more important point about this area of separation is how did we get to this position? Why did the Syrian army even evacuate and give the Israelis the opportunity that they have today? So not a lot of people know about this, but there were diplomatic discussions being had between Turkey, Iran, and Russia about the future of Syria. Okay, Turkey is seeing how the region is exploding because of the events of October 7, 2023, and they were unhappy about how things are progressing. Okay, so they have their own concerns inside in the northern region, like we have discussed. But there was some kind of and there was very active discussion going on about what should we. And this is not just the Astana agreement; it's not even these 3 states, but Qatar was involved, the US was involved, and separate inside Doha, they had discussions about what can we do to create a more inclusive government. so that Syria can be kind of pacified and it doesn't present a regional problem. So at that time, Turkey had offered Assad to kind of step back and form a new coalition government, and they could have a very peaceful transfer of power would have happened, and none of this, we would not have been in this position. But at the time, Bashar al-Assad had absolutely no interest in this discussion at all. The Russians seem to be supporting him, but not exactly, like you've seen in the last few days, that they were not very happy about what Bashar al-Assad was doing as well. The Iranians were not happy with what he was doing. So at the end of the day, Bashar al-Assad did not take any heed of what was being discussed and proposed. So eventually, when Turkey moved in, Turkey then obviously they control some of these groups. Well, I don't want to say control, but influence a lot of these groups. So when the push started coming, and no one saw it happen this quickly. They were expecting Bashar al-Assad to put up a fight. Even the Syrian army, if you look at a few reports going around, you will see that at the time Bashar al-Assad had given orders to his troops to actually stay in the fight. And then as soon as he had done that, he went back home, and instead of going back home, he actually went to the airport, and then he just kind of exited. What happened? Why did this happen? Why is he still quiet? Again, he's in Moscow right now. Moscow is quite clearly keeping him quiet. There's no message for him, no communique, no nothing, no video message. So it seems like this was all in agreement, and eventually Bashar al-Assad was like, okay, I'm getting screwed. I need to look out for myself and my family. Let me just get out of here and let these guys handle everything. So the fact that he did that, and then at the end of the day, it's a dictatorship. So the unity of command is such that if the guy at the top goes, then everyone are headless taken beyond that point. So once he left, the army had nowhere to go. No one knew what was going on. Everyone was looking after their own. The army that was deployed into the area of separation would have felt concerned that, look, these people who are moving in with lightning speed, they'll come to us next time, they'll knock us out. So they kind of all melted away, changed their gear from their army clothes to regular civilians, and just went away. So I want you to understand that one big reason why this whole Israeli ingress inside the area of separation is Bashar al-Assad himself. So had he not done that, had he agreed to this diplomatic effort being done behind the scenes, we would have had a very, let's say, organized and peaceful transfer of power. But because he did not do that, and because he backed off at the end after putting up a tough face, this whole ensuing madness and chaos has given Israel the opportunity to ingress in. And now to push them back, either diplomatically or militarily, will be a little bit of a challenge. So a lot of the apprehension that people have, some naturally and some through people that you've started trusting over the past year or so, ever since the war in Gaza started. People have been listening to a lot of influencers. So Scott Ritter, for example, George Galloway, and some more, let's say, crazy people like Lucas Gage, if you know him on Twitter world. People who were positioning themselves as pro-Palestine, but coming in with their own baggage. So Scott Ritter maybe is not in that category, but maybe the others are. Even maybe George Galloway maybe has his heart in the right place, but he seems to be now echoing some points of the Iranian propaganda machine out there. And I just want you to remember that a lot of these people online, or whoever that we were listening to, because we thought that we were getting good inside info from the battlefield or from the diplomatic space from these people, it seems to me like they're now saying things that are seeding more doubt in people. So it's not naturally built doubts, but they are planted doubts that are coming into mind, and because people are invested heavily either on the Iranian or in what they call the axis of resistance, or on the Israeli side or the US side or the Turkish side. Everyone has their own propaganda. So what I wanted to get to was that, look, if you look at it, what has happened in this whole conflict is that when did Iran exactly get directly involved? If you look at it, it happened when the Israeli Air Force bombed the Iranian embassy or the Iranian consulate inside Damascus. The moment they did that, it was the violation of Syrian and Iranian airspace, and Syrian airspace and Syrian land, but even Iranian land, because such diplomatic enclaves are seen as an extension of your physical territory. So what was Syria's response to this? Now imagine if something like this happened in Pakistan, for example, where I'm from, where an embassy got attacked. Okay, so, and it has happened in the past where the U.S. embassy got attacked inside Pakistan, or the Chinese embassy got attacked inside Pakistan. And what would you do? Would you just should the Pakistani military or the Pakistani establishment just keep quiet and let's say, oh, it's their concerns, their officers, let them handle that? No, you can't do that. You have to respond to that. So in this case, what did Bashar al-Assad do? Absolutely nothing. He didn't do anything at all. But the response came from, although delayed, but it came from the Iranian side. Okay, so that was the first instance of them getting involved actively in this war. And you can see from that point, and in hindsight, you can see that there was mistrust between the two axis of resistance points. So Iran may have asked Syria to act, okay, and Syria did not act, and they continued to not act. So it's not just in this one instance. Throughout, when Iran finally decided that Hezbollah should mobilize and take on the Israelis directly, which resulted in the Israelis moving into southern Lebanon. But Syria dragged its feet. They refused not to get embroiled into the fight directly. I would call that I actually agree with that. I personally think that was the right call to make. But the wrong call to make was not agreeing to this power sharing agreement that was being proposed by the powers that be. And now when you look at all of these doubts that you have, these conspiracy theories that are brewing, it's because of these issues, okay? Because you're listening to these people who were invested in this for their own ulterior motives or for who they thought were on the right side of history, and then suddenly the whole thing has collapsed. So now, they're going into this whole, depression cycle where, because of depression of, we backed something that actually ended up getting completely crushed. They're going to now start, what I call, instead of propaganda, I call it propaganda. Okay, so they're trying to cope with what has happened, and they're coming up with excuses. So instead of blaming XYZ, you should be blaming the people who got you here in the first place. Okay, so that's one aspect. A lot of people who have these issues about who is this Jolani guy, where did he come from? He's an unknown person. He was born in Saudi Arabia. He's a Saudi. But people actually don't know, who have not been following this whole conflict, will not know these things. So Jolani is a well-known person, and his name itself, Jolani, means he comes from, in Arabic is Jolan. Okay, so that's what's called Golan Heights. So Arabic Jolan, English Golan. Okay, so his family is originally from there. And if you were to look at his family, speaking of his family, so a friend of mine, Shilbi Zaman, he did this little thread about who Al-Jolani is. And I'll read out some of it so that you can follow on. He says, Al-Jolani's actual name is Ahmed, son of Hussein, son of Ali, son of Muhammad, son of Khalid al-Shara. Okay, the family is from the Syrian city of Fiqh in the Golan Heights, which was historically part of the Quneitra governorate. Okay, so they owned about 85% of the land in the city. So you can see where his nisba is from. Okay, so who his family is, who his father is, all the way down to his surname and to his territory where he originates from. And then he goes on. He says that, look, he shares this picture of Jolani's father. And he says, this is a picture of Jolani's father, Hussein al-Shara, an academic at an economic symposium in Damascus in 1992. Okay, so he was probably a speaker in that. He was political dissident in his youth, which forced him to leave Syria for a time. And this is the time when he probably went to other countries, like Saudi Arabia was one of the places that he went. He spent a number of stints. He was a political dissident in his youth, which forced him to leave Syria for a time. He spent a number of stints in Syrian prison for his dissent. Okay, so not a very popular figure with Hafez al-Assad back then, and Bashar eventually. Hussein wrote a book on his vision for the future of Syria, which is called A Reading on the Resurrection of Syria, Qiyamah as-Surya. Okay. And in that book, one sees a very pluralistic vision of Syria's society. So Al-Jolani's statements on tolerance are evoking his father's vision. And then he gives some supplementary reading that you can go on and see who Jolani is, and his father, his family, or who have you. So maybe I'll give you a link to his thread. So if you look deeper into his family tree, you will see that his father, Hussein al-Shara, was actually related to Farouk al-Shara, okay, who basically was at one point the Syrian foreign minister. So he's not really a figure who was unknown, came out of nowhere. And a lot of Iranian propagandists are trying to position him as a person who is has no links to Syria whatsoever. He's an outsider, and there are a lot of concerns about outside forces fighting inside Syria. You've seen the Uyghurs over there. But to claim that Jolani is an unknown entity is actually not true. Okay, so it's because people don't know, and a lot of these things I did not know myself. It's only when I got down to doing the groundwork. I had heard of him before, but at that time, he was like a junior in the Al Qaeda world. He's been thrust into this leadership position now, and now that he's in the public figure, people will look more into who he is and who he is not. So these claims being made by pro-Assadist propagandists or propagandists, as I call them these days, do not really add up. Okay, so now that you know a little bit more about who this unknown devil is, there's a lot more misinformation and disinformation going out there about who this person is and who's backing him and funding him, who's arming him. But there was this one picture I was just showing you just one of these because there's so much to debunk that I possibly can't do that. And that's the whole point of fake news. They just throw so much at you that it becomes like very hard to piece up together. And the whole point is inundate you with all kinds of information to confuse you. Okay, you get rattled by all this information, and just that seed of doubt is enough for the propagandists to succeed. Okay, so they will keep. It's not just a coping mechanism. It's done by design to keep you moving from one lie to another to another. Some of these lies can be half truths. Okay, so they might not be lies completely. So someone took a picture of Jolani in his military gear, standing on top of an elevated position, looking outside. And this is only one example that I'm giving you of how fake news is spread. And if you look at what the name of the manufacturer on his clothes, a lot of people started using that to claim that, first of all, someone said that this is Israeli script, okay, or this is Hebrew, and that shows that he's like he would be so dumb that he would take a picture with Hebrew written on his shirt so that everyone knows that he's their pawn or whatever people think. So, but when I did some more investigation, I kind of focused into this, and I saw that actually the name of that manufacturer is something that I can buy off Amazon. Okay, and if you look at more about who these people are, you could go to their website and see what they do. So they are quite clearly into military gear, and then you can even go on to who they are exactly. So if you go to their website, you could scroll down and see all their where they're located. Right at the bottom, you will see their address. You can quite clearly see that it's a Chinese company, manufacturing facility all in China. You can go further up and see some of the certifications that they have. You can see that clearly these are Chinese certifications. Okay. Obviously, they will have some from the West as well to come up to standards. So it's not really, as it was being positioned that these guys, that he's wearing, again by Iranian propagandists, that this guy is an Israeli spy who's working for Israel to take over Syrian territory and as part of a larger, greater Israel project. So I just wanted to mention that this is not just about propaganda out there. And some people could be doing this part of a coping mechanism that the side they thought was on the right side loses. So what can we do to make ourselves feel better? How can I shift the blame from the people that I sympathize with to someone else? And that's how these conspiracy theories start coming or taking shape. Okay, so and these lies are this fake news is kind of put out there, confuse others. Okay, seed doubt in your minds, and not all of them will be incorrect. Some could be half truths, some could be truths. But a lot of times they're outright lies, as this was the case. So, and you can't humanly try to debunk everything in a little small, hopefully 30-minute clip. So I can't do that. I won't do that. I just wanted to give you one example of how, or I've given you a few already, of how this whole thing is, this whole fake news factory starts whenever something of this scale happens. And all depends on who you listen to and how much you trust them, that you end up either believing them and forming a whole worldview out of them that actually does not serve you well. Okay, so that's the whole point of this. I hope this was helpful for everybody. There's a lot going on inside Syria right now. I think a lot of in this area of separation is something that I really want to follow because I want to see how this ends. Like I said, there are many ifs and buts. There are so many permutations of what can happen moving forward. I don't think it will be as straightforward as Israel saying, okay, you know what, we're so nice to you, we're such nice people that we'll just back off and you can have your territory again for no cost. So what are the costs associated? What will be eventually agreed between all the parties, specifically with Turkey. So that's the one that I want you to keep an eye on. There's a Cold War developing. It is already there between Turkey, Israel, and the U.S. I think in the coming few days you will see Turkey stamp down a little bit more on protecting their interests. So now it's coming up to, and a friend of ours, he very rightly called this push by Israel as either a normalization or Balkanization. That's their two objectives that they want. Either normalize relations with Syria or Balkanize them, break them into three, and there are maps floating around online. Again, I don't want to show them because I don't really believe in these things unless they really do happen. But to carve it out into three separate portions, okay? That could be another objective that Israel might want to serve with the move that they've made on the area of separation. So that's the thing I want you guys to keep an eye on. And I also want you to see on how this new government postures from the perspective of defense contracts. Because, if you have any doubts about who is behind these guys, then you will know for a fact when defense contracts start going out. Okay, so for example, if these guys start buying all their equipment from the Chinese, then everything you thought you heard about Israel being behind them is false. Okay, but if they're buying all their aircraft and their defense systems or whatever have you from the Americans, for example, then okay, maybe there was some truth to what was being said about who's backing these people. So keep an eye on these two things: how the area of separation unfold from this point on, and where do defense contracts go. So I hope that this little video helps you understand, make more sense of what's going on, and you can seed out the false news from what really is happening. So until next time, take care and bye-bye.